precinct is not just any precinct. It was the flagship of the Seattle Police Department, and it has now been taken away from them. And I believe that we should not stop there. We should demand that the building doesn't just stay boarded up, that the building does not go back to the police quietly while we are not watching, but that the building is converted as a public resource, as a community center for restorative justice. But we didn't just defeat the police. As some of us were talking last night, the police are simply the outward face of repression under capitalism. And what we've defeated here is the political establishment of this city, under whose watch 30 people have been murdered by the police since 2011. And under whose watch housing has become more and more unaffordable and rents have skyrocketed and resulted in massive gentrification. And so our fight is not just against the police, our fight is for systemic change. And the cops who maced us, who tear gassed us, who did all forms of brutality and violence against us, they had all kinds of weaponry with them, and they still couldn't defeat us because we had the biggest weapon of all, which is multiracial working class solidarity. And that is the only basis on which we can continue building a powerful movement. And other victories have been won as well nationwide, including in Minneapolis, where the establishment has been forced to bring charges against all the 4 killer cops and to upgrade the charge from 3rd to 2nd degree murder against Derek Chauvin, who put his knee on the neck of George Floyd. All of these victories, they show that when we fight by building solidarity among oppressed people, we can win. So what are our demands going forward? This is one of the key discussions of our movement. I will talk about what I think are the key demands of the community, but this is something for every one of us to grapple with. One of the demands that has come out from the community is to defund the police by at least 50%. And for that money to go to socially constructive programs like grassroots initiatives for restorative justice and other services. And I have already pledged, as you know, as part of the People's Budget campaign, to bring that legislation to defund police by 50% to the City Council very soon. We also have something else coming up on Monday next week. My office has brought forward 2 different pieces of legislation. One is to ban Seattle police from using or purchasing any kind of chemical weapon or the so-called crowd control weapon. Another bill is to ban the police from using chokeholds. We are also demanding that corporate mayor Durkan, under whose watch such vicious brutality has been enacted must go. I thank the ACLU for having brought a lawsuit against Durkan for the violence. If Durkan refuses to step down, I will introduce articles of impeachment. And then it will be up to our movement to demand answers from other city council members. Will they vote to impeach? The corporate media asked me, what do you say to those who are protesting? Those who say that protesting is all fine and dandy, that's your right, but we need the police to keep these protests in check. Isn't Mayor Durkan doing the right thing? Don't the police need to maintain order? My response was no. I do not accept these attempts to put the blame for police violence on the movement. I asked instead, what do you, the corporate media, say to the family of Kyle Gray, murdered by the police in 2017, to the family of Jason Sievers, murdered by the Seattle police in 2018, to the family of Ayosha Faletogo, murdered by Seattle police in 2018, to the family of Danny Rodriguez, murdered by Seattle police in 2019, to the family of Ryan Smith, murdered by Seattle police in 2019, to the family of Elliot Yerby, murdered in 2019, to the family of the unidentified African-American homeless man in mental distress who was shot 5 times in Queen Anne, to the family of Sean Lee Fuhr, who was shot in the head just a few weeks ago while holding his baby girl. What do you say to the families of these 8 community members who have been brutally killed in Seattle by the police since Durkan took office? And not one police officer has been prosecuted on her watch. We know demanding accountability from the police, from the establishment, is like saying the police should police themselves because the police are serving the establishment. That is why our movement has to demand an elected community oversight board with full powers over the police. And when I say full powers, I mean hiring and firing decisions. I mean subpoena powers. I mean an independent body elected by us, by voters, not appointed by establishment politicians. And alongside these demands, we also have to fight to tax Amazon and other profiteering big business. Because our city is not only reeling from the COVID crisis and joblessness, it was already reeling from the housing affordability crisis. We need a massive expansion of social housing to begin to strike a blow against racist gentrification. But for that, we need money, and that money has to come from whom? Should it come from the poor? No. Should it come from the working class? No. It has to come from the wealthiest in our society. There is a debate in our movement, and it's good to have debates in our movement. There's a debate in our movement should we demand that the police be defunded by 50%, along with other concrete demands, or should we instead call for the police to be abolished? As a socialist, I absolutely am fighting for a society free of police, free of racism, sexism, bigotry, free of all oppression and violence. But as I said to some of you last night, you may agree or you may disagree with my analysis, but I will not bullshit you and make false promises. As socialists, we recognize that the police cannot just be reimagined or rebranded out of existence under capitalism. In Minneapolis, politicians have made promises along those lines. But those who know what's up in the movement down out there, those who are on the ground, will tell you that there is a big element of happy talk by politicians, that it's not real, and that the Minneapolis council members who made that promise yesterday had to walk it back and themselves admit that they have not actually voted to disband the police. This discussion, this is true, this discussion, but it's a valid discussion. This discussion shows that the politicians and the establishment are under pressure from the movement, and that's a good thing. However, it's in our interest. I mean, the politicians will make all kinds of promises and then they will break them. It's up to us. If we actually want to win a society free of police and free of oppression, then we have to understand that the police exist for a reason in a system like capitalism, as do the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, and all the other forces of the repressive state apparatus. They exist for a reason under capitalism. And what is that reason? That reason is to defend capitalism itself. A bankrupt system which needs repression to divide us and enforce a deeply unequal and unjust society in which hundreds of millions face hunger, billions have no health care to speak of, while a few at the top amass unimaginable wealth. Capitalism has given us a world where eight billionaire men own as much wealth as the poorest half of the world, and 40 million Americans are currently unemployed. This kind of system needs repression to defend itself because, as Malcolm X said, you can't have capitalism without racism. We need a fundamentally different kind of society if we aim to achieve a society free of police. That is why I'm a socialist, because I'm fighting for a world based on solidarity and equality, in which the world's resources and all the major corporations are democratically owned and controlled by us workers. Such a world that is based on equality and cooperation will not need police and repression. But I'm not just holding out a vision. As a socialist, I am also fighting, and we have to fight, to hold police accountable in every manner possible right now, like cutting the police budget in half in order to begin to starve their ability to repress us. Like the permanent ban on the so-called crowd control weapons, which will be voted on in the city council on Monday. So it's our job to demand, city council members, which way are you going to vote, and are you going to water it down? But it's not a question of just fighting for reforms or holding out a vision. It's a question of doing both. We have to fight for the far-reaching reforms, but we must also build the struggle for a socialist world. As Black Panther Party leader Stokely Carmichael said, and I quote, it's a beautiful quote, if a white man wants to lynch me, that's his problem. If he's got the power to lynch me, that's my problem.
That's right. Come on. That's right.
Brother Stokely went on to say, racism is not a question of attitude, it is a question of power. Racism gets its power from capitalism, Stokely said. Thus, if you're anti-racist, then whether you know it or not, you must be anti-capitalist. Because, as he said, the power for racism, the power for sexism comes from capitalism, not an attitude. We need a political struggle and a movement that will address not only political violence, but also mass unemployment, the lack of affordable housing, our overcrowded and gentrified schools. We need to organize in our communities, workplaces, schools, demanding not only justice from the police and the judicial system, but also economic justice. We need to connect the fight against police brutality for all these other demands in our society. And we need to do so to widen our struggle and to build a broad and powerful multiracial working class movement. So we have many next steps, which I will share with you as the rally goes. But first, it is my pleasure and honor to invite one of us, one of the leaders who has helped build this movement for 8 days, which has just won a victory. Juan Turner is a native of Seattle. She's a member of Laborers Local 242 who has been out at the barricades on 11th and Pine with us for this past week. When I spoke at the front lines on Sunday night, we were just 2 feet away from the police. And Sean and her comrades flanked me at the back because they didn't want me to be hurt by the police. This is the kind of moving solidarity and courage that we see in our movement. So I hope you will give a warm welcome to one of the leaders of this movement, Sean Turner.
Yo, what's up, you guys? Okay, listen, let me just talk about this. It's not about me. I wouldn't call myself a leader or anything like that. I just have an opinion that I think, when presented, it should be heard. You know what I'm saying? Like the rest of us, we all have opinions, but we all have to. So most people, they talk and they hear to respond. They don't talk and hear to understand. Amen. You know what I'm saying? So hopefully you guys understand what I'm saying. If you don't, I'll always talk to you and help you understand. I'm not an asshole that'll push you off and won't listen to you. I will listen. But like she said, I'm here because I'm black, I'm gay, and I'm a girl. You know what I'm saying? I live in Seattle, okay? And I have brothers, I have cousins, and I have nieces that are all black that have been subject to brutality and harassment by SPD. And in order to accomplish the things that defunding SPD and demilitarizing them, what do we have to do? Hold them accountable for things they've done here to people here. You know what I'm saying? We have to hold them accountable for their actions here in Seattle. George Floyd gave us this platform to do that. And that's what matters. He gave black people like me a chance to be heard first above everybody else. And that matters. That definitely matters because we're all here because of that. Now let's take that energy that he gave us and turn it into something that benefits us here at home too. Because let's be real, we've all heard the same. Change has to start at home before it can affect the world. We can't change the world unless we change Seattle first, correct? So let's hold these officers accountable for the lives they've taken. Former officer Ian Burke was never charged or prosecuted for killing John T. Williams, even though he was found to be unjustified in doing so. And he was never charged to this day. John T. Williams' family got a bunch of keepsakes. Where's the justice in that? There is no justice in keepsakes because that man is still walking, the man who killed him is still walking around living life, enjoying it, while John T. Williams' family has what? What did they get out of that deal?
Nothing.
Exactly, nothing. Shay Taylor was killed by Officer Michael Spaulding and Scott Miller. The jury inquest into that shooting found that Mr. Taylor was actually trying to comply with police, but because the officers feared for their life, it was why he's dead now. They didn't fear for his life because he was threatening to them or because of his stature or his size. It's because he was a black man. His skin is what made them afraid for their lives. And if we want to change that here in Seattle, we need to hold them accountable for killing him. Simple as that. It's just that simple, you guys. Let's hold SPD accountable for what SPD does. Because that's the only way we're going to defund them and demilitarize them and have a socialist society where we make the decisions about the police. That's the only way. We have to hold them accountable for us to make the decisions regarding them. Why not? This is how we make George Floyd's movement bigger and spread it across the nation. Minneapolis started there, and the world followed. Let's start here and be another example for the rest of the world to follow. I'm out. That's all. That's all I got to say. I'm out.
Thank you, Sister Tilshon. Please welcome another of our sisters, Katrina Johnson, spokesperson and family member of Charlene Elias. Welcome, Katrina.
Hello, everybody. It's good to see you out here. Welcome to the fucking fight. I just want to say a couple of things. And I know that George Floyd's murder is the reason why some of you guys are all out here today. And I'm appreciative that you guys are out here. But make no mistake about it, families have been on the front lines seeking justice for our loved ones long before George Floyd came up. So we are glad you guys have finally decided to join us in the fucking fight. Next Thursday, June 18th, will be 3 years since Charlene was murdered. And we have no answers into what the fuck happened to my cousin. Why did she have to die? Why did two 6'2", 250-pound men kill a 5'3", 100-pound pregnant woman in front of 3 of her 4 kids? I want some answers, and I demand answers, and I want you guys to join me in demanding answers into what happened to my cousin.
Yeah!
I have a couple of demands, and let's just start with the simple one. Mayor Jenny Durkan, she has to fucking go. Period. She promised my family before she took office that she would be there for us, that she would be accountable to us, and that she would hold officers and other folks accountable, and none of that's happened. I want an apology, and she gotta go. I also want the officers Jason Anderson and Stephen McNew to drop their lawsuit against King County so that we can have an inquest process to find out what the hell happened and why did y'all murder Charlena Lyles. And until they drop that, we cannot move forward. We want King County to drop their lawsuit, Renton to drop their lawsuit, Kent to drop their lawsuit, so all the rest of those families who are waiting for answers into why did you guys kill our loved ones, we want an inquest, we want it now, we want to know what happened to our loved ones, and the only way that's going to happen is if they drop the lawsuit. So we need you guys to ask them and to tell them and to shout, drop the fucking lawsuits. And the last thing that I would like to say, and in my professional capacity, I do work alongside police officers, but I am a family member, and I say defund the fucking police.
Yeah!
Can we do a chant in solidarity with Charlena Lyles' family and with Sister Katrina? Hey, hey, ho, ho, Jenny Durkan's got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho.
Jenny Durkan's got to go.
Hey, hey, ho, ho.
Jenny Durkan's got to go.
Hey, hey, ho, loud.
Jenny Durkan's got to go.
Hey, hey, ho.
Ho! Jenny Durkan's got to go. Hey, hey! Ho, ho! Jenny Durkan's got to go. Hey, hey! Ho, ho! Jenny Durkan's got to go. Hey, hey! Ho, ho! Jenny Durkan's got to go.
I love chanting too. I don't have the voice for that right now. We've been talking about gentrification as a major instrument of racism. And as Katrina said, community members have been waging a fight for decades. And nobody listened to them. And they've been doing important work. And one of the members of our community and leaders who's been part of this community pushing back against gentrification is K. Viking Garrett from the Africatown Community Land Trust and King County Equity Now Coalition. Please give a movement welcome to Brother Viking.
Peace, y'all. Y'all look powerful. Who got the power?
We got the power.
Who got the power? Who got the power?
We do.
Whose streets?
Our streets.
Whose streets?
Our streets.
Now, I appreciate this opportunity to come from the front lines in our community, in the Central District, in the South End, to come down to this front line that so many of you have been holding down, holding strong, and keeping the powerful presence here. So give it up for yourself, for everyone that's been out here holding it down. Now make some real noise. One thing I want to say is that we should never be sitting ducks when we're fighting a more powerful force or enemy in terms of physical force. Like one of our great ancestors, Muhammad Ali, said, we must what? Float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. And it's okay that some of the police want to take a knee, but we said it before and we'll say it again. What we really need is for their bosses to pay the fee. When we talk about paying the fee, we're talking about reparations. We're talking about repair rations. We're talking about resources. Pay the fee. Pay the fee. Pay the fee. See, we have to have land and access to capital and resources to develop and build on that land and build the spaces where we can save lives, thousands of lives, in honor of the lives that they stole. We can't bring back those lives, but we can keep those spirits, we can keep those names lifted up in spaces where we're safe, in spaces where we have sanctuary, in spaces, again, where we can save lives and we can grow and thrive. And so this is what the King County EquityNow.com, King County Equity Now Coalition has put forth a number of demands related to land and resources, redistributing resources that have been maldistributed for centuries in this country. I've heard a lot of talk about looting and property damage and people that are concerned about that. But I stand before you as a descendant of those who were looted from Africa and brought here as property and have been being damaged for the last 450 years. So what about the damages that we're suffering? How do we get made whole? How do we get repaired? It's called reparations. In other words, pay the fee. So we need everyone to go on to KingCountyEquityNow.com. There's calls there for specific land in our community, like the Fire Station 6 on 23rd and Yesler, that was supposed to be transferred for community use as the William Gross Enterprise and Cultural Innovation Center, so that we can get our young people in our community in business, growing businesses, using their genius, tapping into that so they can be economically sustainable. Because more police is not what makes Laurelhurst safer. More police is not what makes Broadmoor safer. It's the economic sustainability, and a lot of those resources have been maldistributed. And so, yes, defund the police and redistribute those resources back to effective community-based safety solutions. People with poor problem-solving skills and guns in our community don't make our community safer. Initiatives like community passageways, creative justice, Umoja Peace Center, so many programs, Choose 180, so many grassroots programs, CD Panthers, Rotary Styles, many programs in our community run by people who do it just on the love. They need the resources. All of that money going to the police, to prisons, which are not effective. So, again, we stand here with you to say it's okay to take a knee, but what we really need them to do is pay the fee.
Peace community, my name is Nikita. I have a question for y'all, and I'm going to ask you to be honest. For how many of you has the last 10 days been the first time you took a step in the streets for Black lives? Keep your hand up, everybody look around. Go ahead and clap, show some love. The King County Equity Now Coalition is building a plan for what it looks like to begin to set right the things that have been stolen. Stolen land, stolen peoples, stolen resources over and over again for a very long time. I feel inspired when I think about the Freedom Summers, where people spent their entire summer in the streets fighting for justice, fighting for equity. This system is going to try to go back to the way it was before COVID. It's going to try to force y'all back into your jobs, back into your rhythm, and make you forget the reason you got into the streets in the first place. I need you to remember. We need you to keep the fire. We need you to stay in the streets. Brother Y. King laid out the plan. What I want to give you is an encouragement to keep up the fight. This city, this county is going to try to give us concessions, reforms to pacify our movement. We cannot have a pacified movement. We need a movement that continues with fire and passion and a commitment to see Black lives truly matter, a commitment to see Indigenous lives truly matter, to honor folks upon our backs, y'all's livelihood was built. White folks, you have the privilege you have because our ancestors suffered. Because our grandmothers fed your grandmother's children. So raise your hands again if this was the first time you've been in the streets for Black lives. Keep your hand up if you're going to stay in the streets until our demands are met. So what do we want? We want them to pay the what? Pay the. Stay in the streets, y'all.
Every one of us is going to give you an action to take back. Every one of us is going to give you a different action. And part of it is we're working in unity. And I need every last one of you to remember that. I'm asking each member that's out here in community with me, that is a union member, to truly understand there is one union that works against community, and that is law enforcement. And until we can shut them, at this point where we are in this day and time, we can no longer afford for them to go through more trainings, more anything, more apologies. Thank you, but no thank you. Get the hell out of the union and get your way back in if you need to. I repeat, every person that is a union member, if you really do care for Black lives, if you really do care for Indigenous lives, if you really do care about us, understand what hurts us. Law enforcement has never been there for us. Will never be there for us. We have proven over and over that we can take care of our own community. So if that's the case, not only give us what's needed, but take people that protect them out of the equation. They can earn their way back in. But until that day comes, as of this day, goodbye, union. Go away.
I want to say welcome to everyone out here. My name is Elijah. I'm a mother. I'm a community member. I'm from the Central area, and I've been in these streets from day one. I grew up around the Panthers' time. I grew up when my community was fighting and advocating for me to have a better opportunity in life. So I'm now here to do it today, not just for my community, but for my children, my grandchildren, and my great-great-grandchildren. I'm encouraging everybody out here to go ahead and educate themselves about the 13th Amendment, about the history of how the police even came to be, about the slave catchers, that type of crap that they was doing back then, right? And so how we're here today talking about police accountability and police brutality, and how they're incarcerating, in particular, my Black community. Since we supposedly had emancipation, but they had a fix in the Constitution, we got to fix that. We need to end enslavement, period. No excuses. So now, We got the prison, the school to prison pipeline, and we got the police in our schools. We got the schools acting like they the police, harassing our children, trying to kill their spirits, and then sending them to kid prison, if not trying to send them to adult prison, and then trying to kill them on top of that. We can't have that no longer. Education is supposed to be liberating for everybody, but for some reason, in our society, we want to keep killing the black mind and killing the black genius. Well, I say value black genius. Say it, value black genius. Value black intelligence and value black leadership. So, thank you, because I'm here to talk to you about the lost ones who are incarcerated right now, who done got caught up with the bad policies, the racist policies, right? When there was the war on drugs and they was talking about crack and cocaine and who the privilege they want to save, white folks using powder cocaine, black folks impacted by crack, so let's demonize these black people in my black community. That's killing black lives right there and got my people incarcerated, and they still have that mentality to today in the federal government, in our state capital in Washington, up in Olympia right now, where we're talking about the 3 strikes, so we're going to go ahead and drop a strike that benefits the new face of addiction, which are white people. Y'all the majority of the ones with the new faces where we want to give you some health insurance and send y'all to rehab, where we want to go ahead and incarcerate the victims of addiction back in the day when it was crack addiction. And I need y'all white folks to step up. I need everybody, but particularly the white folks who are privileged, living off the backs of our sacrifices, to get up there and vote and get active and make sure we correct this. There's so many laws right now in Washington, up in Olympia, that we are trying to correct, from marijuana to cocaine to crack, that got our people still stuck in there. We got about 62, under 100 people right now who are mainly seniors who are still struck out, but the people up there, mainly white politicians who are afraid to hurt their white relationships and will not let my people out. Will not let my people to have a chance to go back to court to go see another white judge and try to get out. So I need y'all to correct that and understand that these policies are still in effect. So if we're really going to value black lives, and if black lives are really going to matter, we got to do it at every level. So in addition to defunding the police to bring some resources back to the community, in addition to getting our school district to separate ourselves from these police contracts and figure something else out, I need the school district to hold y'all accountable to make sure you fire these teachers in that union so that they get in trouble, because they can't be calling the police on my kids. And when I say my kids, I'm talking about all the babies. Not just mine, but all the babies. We cannot have this where you call the police and it's a threat, because I'm telling you right now there should be a consequence to that, because every time you call the police for some dumb shit, you're putting white people at risk of losing their lives. I can't have that no longer. If you're here for something real, you can't have that for no longer. So I'm demanding y'all to really step up and do something to make this count. Thank you.
Say put your hands in the air, put your fist up. Say pay the fee. Free the land. Pay the fee. Free the land.
Are you all energized to fight the fight? Next we have somebody who lives right here on Capitol Hill and has been one of the lead protesters in this struggle on 11th and Pine. So please welcome Payday Payton.
Come on. We need to get louder than that, ladies and gentlemen. Can we do that? Can we do that? Can we do that? Can we get loud? Seattle? Can we get loud, Seattle? Come on, baby. I got a few things to say. I'm not a political figure. I'm more of a black man that has taken upon a role where it's necessary. Sometimes there's things that you have to do in life where it may feel uncomfortable. You may feel like you don't have the confidence or the strength to do certain things in the community that need to be done. But sometimes you got to nip it in the bud and you just got to do it. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm in Seattle. I stepped foot out here and I saw all these faces on 11th and Pine. And then guess what? We wanted to surround the entire precinct just to let them know that we're going to peacefully protest. And we're going to be here every day, all day. So one thing I wanted to do is talk about the streets and how they've been working. Because a lot of the politicians that you see on these TV screens, they're going to give you the agendas. They're going to give you the falsifications. They're going to give you the lies. I'm going to give you the truth of how the streets have been going down since we stepped on these floors for the last 10 to 12 days. I'm going to speak for the medics who have risked their lives. I'm going to speak for the people who have stand side by side at every single march and every single protest, who have been flashed in the face, who have caught the tear gas to the face. You are the front runners. You are the number ones to this. You are the reason why you are here. You are the reason why we unify. Every single person in this diamond, every single person in this park, whether you've been here for the first time or you've been here every single day, you are the reason, you are the fuel for why Black Lives Matter today. I want to keep it short and sweet. The only way this is going to work is when we're standing out in those marches, or if you see any flyer that has to do with the march, get your ass to that march. Get your ass to that march. You need to link your arms with your brothers and sisters. It does not matter if you're white. It does not matter if you're black. It does not matter if you're Indian. It does not matter what your race is. We are one race. We are one race right now. You are a part of history, and you are changing the world as it is today. Right now. Right now. So when you're in those streets and you feel like your life is in danger, I want you to look to the left and I want you to look to the right. And I want you to remind yourself and I want you to remind your family, because we are not here individually. We are here as a unit. We are here to make change, ladies and gentlemen. And with all this right here, I promise you today, with all this right here, I promise you today, just in Seattle, Washington, we have the world watching, and we are going to make change. So whose lives matter?
Black Lives Matter!
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 Thank you. Let's keep this rolling. Let's keep this going. Everybody fight for yourselves, and you fight for this whole community that we got going on.
As Peyton said, whose streets?
Our streets!
Whose streets?
Our streets!
Whose streets?
Our streets! Yeah!
Next. Next, please welcome somebody who's been a leader in the Central District for decades, fighting for the black community that was forsaken completely by the political and business establishment. Please welcome Reverend Jeffrey, Senior Pastor of the New Hope Missionary Baptist Church in the city.
I've been in these streets all my life. I've been in this struggle all my life. I've been stopped by the police over 50 times, and I'm a senior pastor of a church. I've been hit in the stomach with batons. I've gone through everything and experienced the total demonic structures that is Seattle. I'm here tonight or today because the struggle continues.
Yeah.
What happened to George Floyd happens to Black Americans in this country every day. No matter who you are, it doesn't matter what your background is, doesn't matter what your education is. I received a doctorate degree at 27 years old, and I've been treated like a nigger all my life in this city, in cities in this country. We can't breathe. We can't get loans for our businesses. My church was burnt to the ground. In 1995, I came around the corner and fire destroyed the whole building, a building built by poor Black people, simply because we dared to give Volcano awards to evil, insidious, and racist people. We can't get business loans. They wouldn't even give me a loan to rebuild a church that was already built by the nickels and dimes of poor Black people. While white people stayed at home during this pandemic on their computers, my brothers and sisters went to the front lines in this pandemic. In contrast, Black and brown people have always been forced to the front lines, tote that bar, lift that bell, while others sit comfortably in their homes. Amen. This they did in 2019 with low-paying jobs that wouldn't even pay their rent. This they did with a pandemic raging. This they did without health insurance, without health care. This is a burden carried by working poor in this country. And it is all too often, it is carried without anybody caring. In addition, there is no fair and equitable treatment when it comes to affordable housing. We have been kicked out of a community that we paid property taxes in for 40 years, for 70 years. Old people have been forced out of their homes through reprehensible loans. People are now homeless in the street, while this city becomes the richest city in America. We have been gentrified. We have been ostracized. We have been replaced, disgraced, erased, and to add insult to injury, we are being murdered one by one by a racist police force. I was stopped one night around 11 o'clock at night, leaving my burnt out church, and held without any charges for 2 hours while racist cops laughed in my face. This must end. This must stop. Black people must not suffer alone anymore. We must walk together. As an African American, as African Americans, we have spent over 400 years in this country trying to prove to white folk that they are engaged in a systemic oppression of God's children from the Northern Africa, God's children, created in his image. However, still today, we're left to live in a racist America, exemplified by the dead bodies of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, Deontay Hamilton, Eric Gardner, John Crawford, Ezell Ford. And right here in this city, a young, pregnant black woman, Charlena Lloyd, murdered in front of her 2 children. You wonder where bitterness comes from. You wonder where rage comes from. It comes from children looking at violence and nothing is done about it. However, once again, we must stand amidst the stench of the decaying bodies of countless numbers of African Americans, either lynched, murdered by white racists, or killed by the police, and declare to historically indifferent people in different nations that we can't breathe. We got to move. We got to do better. And even now, our screams are being marginalized by those who question the nature and character of our screams. We must understand that a scream is by its very nature destructive. A scream is going to break some glass. A scream is going to cause some chaos. A scream, by its very nature, wants to get your attention. It's trying to let you know it's getting late in the evening. It's getting late in the evening. It's getting late in the evening. Time has come. The time has come. The time has come. We cannot, we must not muffle the screams of those whose painful existence in this corrupt, evil, systemically demonic system. The screams of those who can only scream. They have no power. They have no money. They have no influence. Their politicians have betrayed them. The police killed them. Their religion marginalizes them. They have no power. They must scream. So let us scream with them. Let us scream. Let us scream on Broadway. Let us scream. Let us scream on Pine. Let us scream. Let us scream. Scream downtown. Scream in City Hall. Today, over 400 years, African Americans face the fact that America is either unwilling or unable to do what is necessary to facilitate our freedom. So if our freedom is to be won, it must be won in the streets. It must be won block by block, city by city, town by town, state by state. It must be won by those of us who will not allow ourselves to be dominated. Send a message to the dominator in chief that I am a man. I'm a black man. My grandfather was a black man who fought on the streets of Pine in Tulsa, Oklahoma during the riots. I'm a black man. I was born with Africa in my spirit. I was born with liberation in my mind. I will not be dominated. I will speak liberation, not domination. I will speak up with the people, not controlling the people. I will speak that the time has come for us to unite. There can't be no black cause and white cause. There can only be people's cause. There can only be our cause. You got to go into the black community and support struggling black institutions, struggling black people who are trying to make it, who are trying to change this world, who are trying to make this city a better place. Because if there is no justice, there will be no peace. If there is no justice, we will not allow there to be peace. Fight on! Fight on! Fight on! Fight on!
No justice? No justice?
No peace!
No justice?
No peace!
No justice?
No peace!
No justice?
No peace!
No racist?
Police!
No racist?
Police!
No justice?
No peace! Yeah!
Are you fired up or what?
Yeah!
I know it's raining, but there's 2,000 people here sitting or standing in the rain. And we have 700 people watching on the live stream. We have other speakers, don't go anywhere. But when when the speakers are done, we are going to be marching. And I will tell you the location soon, not yet. So, you heard Sister Ayan Muse say, she's a union member. She said, law enforcement has never been on the side of the workers. So we are demanding that the Seattle Police Officers Guild be removed from our labor council. And I'm speaking not just as a socialist and elected representative of Seattle's working people. I am also speaking as a rank and file member of the teachers union, which is part of this labor council. And as a rank and file member, I demand that the labor council kick out Spock. We have another of our brothers here who is going to share his own message of why he believes this and what solidarity actually means. We have Brother Logan Swan, who's a rank and file iron worker, a member of Socialist Alternative, and who has marched for Black lives, for the Amazon tax, and for socialism. So please welcome Brother Logan and his siblings from the construction trades unions.
My name is Logan Swan. I'm a rank and file union iron worker and a member of Socialist Alternative. I plan to speak tonight in support of the demand to the Martin Luther King County Labor Council, and I will. But as a rank and file member of the Iron Workers Union Local 86, I have to address the horrible incident on Sunday where a member of my union drove his car into the protest and shot one of us. The police have been using their cars as weapons against our demonstrations against racist police violence. In Charlottesville, a white supremacist barreled his car into an anti-racist protest, injuring many and killing a young woman. Everyone's seen the people online threatening to run over protesters who were in the streets. This event follows another incident the week prior where a member of my union local called for an open season on black people. Despite labor unions across the country calling for and marching in solidarity with those demanding justice for George Floyd, my union's leadership has been completely silent. Only now, after this act of violence, did Chris McLean, one of the leaders of my union, speak up on behalf of Local 86. McLean said, quote, "We're just not willing to take a look at 30 seconds of video or a couple snapshots and say that this is what is our opinion." As a proud member of the Iron Workers Union and the labor movement, it is my duty to stand with our movement against racism and police violence and say that it is utterly shameful. And say that it is utterly shameful for a labor leader to refuse to speak up against racism and refuse to condemn acts of violence against communities of color. I'm here to convey the powerful message of working class solidarity that the union movement was built on. That an injury to one is an injury to all. That we will not win our fight for economic justice unless we also join together and fight against racism, sexual violence, and bigotry. The leadership of the Seattle building trades have been silent as people demand justice in the most powerful multiracial working class movement against racism that we've seen in a generation. But we know that there is no neutral on a moving train. To quote Desmond Tutu, "If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor." But it is no coincidence that this same leadership of my union wasn't quiet when our movement was fighting to tax Amazon for affordable housing in 2018. They very much had an opinion when the vast wealth of the richest man in the world was threatened with an incredibly modest tax. I was public in supporting the fight for affordable housing in this city with the fastest rising rents and devastating gentrification. And for that, my union leaders literally turned their back on me. But no opinion when we have sisters and brothers who cannot breathe. Solidarity, an important word in the labor movement. What does it mean? Solidarity means being on the side of the oppressed. Solidarity means standing with our siblings, sisters, and brothers. Solidarity means that when you're a bus driver, you refuse to drive protesters to jail, as Brother Adam Birch in the Minneapolis Transit Union recently declared. Solidarity means going from the workplaces to the streets, like thousands of healthcare workers did here in Seattle last week. Solidarity means being out here, building this movement, bringing this energy into our workplaces, to the shop floors and the job sites, and into our union halls. Which brings me to an important struggle in the labor movement. Our unions have one responsibility: to be the fighting organizations of the working class struggle against the bosses, the billionaires who exploit all of us workers, whether we are black or white or brown, militantly taking up our demands, our needs, our class interests, and being a vehicle of our power where it really is, at our workplaces, where we create all of the vast wealth of this world. There is only one working class. It is every color, gender, and faith. It speaks every language, and it is international. The responsibility of organized labor is in conflict with the organization that shields the officers killing our brothers and sisters, the Seattle Police Officers Guild. The primary function of the police is to protect the property of the owning class. From 200 years ago with slave catchers, through today with the legacy of violent strike breaking and suppression of our mass movements. There is a request by some on the Martin Luther King County Labor Council to warn the police that they better change their ways. This is not enough. The police already had their chance. 10 years ago, the Seattle Police Department murdered Brother John T. Williams. 2 years later, the results of a federal investigation were in, shocking nobody. SPD regularly uses excessive force and regularly targets minorities. In the 8 years from then to now, SPD has fought reform tooth and nail, even shamefully using their union contract as a weapon against any increase of accountability. In the 8 years from then to now, SPD has killed 30 people, 30 of our brothers and sisters. In the 8 years from then to now, they've had their second chance and more. And right when the Seattle Police Officers Guild and political establishment was trying to get out from under these responsibilities again, they got another chance with all of us out here in the street demanding justice. I think the despicable way that they've conducted themselves these past weeks speaks for itself. The Martin Luther King County Labor Council needs to expel the Seattle Police Officers Guild, full stop. They were only allowed in the council in 2014 after they were supposed to be reforming. I think most people are done trying to ask nicely, putting kid gloves on while they've taken the gloves off. I congratulate the Seattle Educators Union for saying that the Police Officers Guild should be expelled from the labor movement. King County Labor Council, follow the lead of our ATU bus drivers. No collaboration with the police. We've got a petition to expel the Seattle Police Officer Guild from the Martin Luther King County Labor Council. I ask all union members in the crowd today and watching at home, go to tinyurl.com/spogout and sign the petition to this demand. SPOGOUT. We demand a ban on the purchase and use of chemical weapons by the police. These are banned for use in war. Why is it acceptable to use them against working folks armed with water bottles and umbrellas? And a warning to my sisters and brothers and siblings in organized labor. Crowd control used on protesters today will be used on striking workers tomorrow. Combating systemic racism and the rampant inequality we see today isn't just getting the police off of people's necks. Seattle and Washington's regressive revenue relies on taxing workers, but we're laid off. We've been quarantined. We have stagnant wages. We don't have any more to give. Tax the rich! We demand no austerity. Cut the budget of the SPD, not to social programs working families need.
They don't need more military weapons and hardware to use against us. We demand to tax Amazon and big business for a major jobs and housing program. There is legislation in City Hall from Socialist City Council member Shama Sawan, a member of my organization, that will create 10,000 permanently affordable, publicly owned homes. And to build it will create 10,000 union building trades jobs to do it, which will make a big dent in racist gentrification. With a modest tax on the wealthiest companies in the city, we can generate $500 million a year for green jobs and housing. 34,000 jobs will be created or supported by this tax on those who can spare it the most. Our movement should demand answers from the other city council members. Will you stand with communities of color and support the Amazon tax? Or will you just say Black Lives Matter and do nothing to support the black community? This is a historic moment. I'm appealing to the leadership of the Martin Luther King County Labor Council to live up to the person it's named after, and all of the local unions under its banner to formally take up these demands, because they are demands of our working class movement. They are the demands of the working class, and they are our own. I would also ask for union members watching this and in the crowd to come out on Sunday, this coming Sunday on June 14th at 5:30 p.m., where there's a march, and come out with us in solidarity with Black Lives Matter, Justice for George Floyd, and wear your union attire and show that organized labor is a force for all workers, union, non-union. Doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter where you're from. You're working class. We got your back. Solidarity.
Yeah.
What do we want? Spog out. When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Spog out.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Spog out.
When do we want it?
Now.
Brother Logan mentioned that the Amazon tax is about fighting for the working class. It's about fighting for housing affordability. It's about fighting against gentrification of black and brown communities. And we demand answers from the politicians. Tomorrow, the city council will have a budget committee. We have to demand answers from them. Will they vote yes on the Amazon tax? So please sign up online tomorrow at noon to speak in public testimony, because we need your voices. Brother Logan mentioned that the Seattle Educators Union has already voted to kick Spog out of the Labor Council. Our next speaker is a member of the Seattle Educators Union. Bruce Jackson, here at Akai Kuruse Middle School. He's an ethnic studies curriculum writer and author of the Black Lives Matter in School, an agent of. Welcome, Brother Bruce.
That's a big crowd. I've been waiting most of my life for moments like these. Moments that bring hope from the darkness. Moments that shine on what could exist in a place like this. A place that beats black people. But, last night at our labor, at the rep assembly for Seattle Education Association, we were kind of pissed off.
Yeah.
And it was easy to get people to say incredible things. So we made MBIs that created those incredible things and created a mechanism to make those things happen. So, yeah, last night, instead of just like, observe, I'm not a very good speaker. We voted decisively to remove the police. We voted to petition the city to redirect that money to count. We voted to support Black lives that have been injured by these protests, by pushing $1,000 in the direction of the organizations trying to keep people out of jail, trying to support the Black families that are in crisis. And of our students is happening on Saturday. We voted to do everything we could to get the Seattle Police Guild kicked out of the Martin Luther King Jr. Labor Council.
Yeah!
On Friday.
Yeah!
And most off, we voted to defund police in this city. We voted to demand that a piece of the $363 million police budget be allotted to counseling, drug treatment, and conflict resolution. Last night, we voted to change the direction of our nation. Wow. We got a lot of blowback from other speakers and people who are trying to knock us down, but the most common metaphor was, one bad apple. Bad apples don't spoil the whole lot. And it kind of pissed me off because, I wanted to say, well, Zoom meetings kind of prevented us from getting absolutely rowdy at that meeting, but I wanted to say, let's take that metaphor further. That metaphor claims that one bad apple shouldn't spoil the whole lot. But I couldn't help but think of take that metaphor to its realistic end. What if apples were designed to make you sick? What if apples killed your friends and families 3 times a day for the length of your lifetime? What was on your table? And smile and be respectful as those apples went unpunished time and time again for their brutality, for feeding the poison. I shouldn't be afraid of apples. I shouldn't have to watch what I say when apples are around. I shouldn't have to watch who I date for fear of what apples might think. I shouldn't be afraid to speak in opposition of the 1,098 people murdered by apples last year. Now, I'm working with a group of educators who want to change the world. The Ethnic Studies Advisory Group, the Center for Racial Equity, Social Equity Educators, Black Lives Matter at School, and the Akikurosi Middle School educators. We want to change the world. We want to end racism that is institutionalized in our education system. The racism that taught the police in Minneapolis that black men were beasts, capable of handling any brutality. The racism that chased Ahmaud Arbery down the roads of rural Georgia. The racism that murdered Breonna Taylor in her home in Mitch McConnell's Kentucky. We are fighting racism. We will end white supremacy by adding equity to systems that educate our children. We will end white supremacy by teaching our students that Black Lives Matter. We will end white supremacy by becoming a multiracial team of educators teaching the power that exist in all of our histories, by exposing the lies that permeate the current master narrative. We want to change the world, but none of what we teach means anything if our students leave our school walls to be murdered by the bad apples in that bunch.
Dear friends, so many of our speakers at these rallies, including this one, have emphasized that oppression comes in different forms under capitalism. And that is why we have to have solidarity among those of us who are oppressed. And among those who are oppressed in capitalist America are our immigrant community members, our immigrant neighbors. And that is why it is so important that we have our next speaker who's been a fighter for immigrant rights, for economic justice in our city and state for decades. So please welcome the director of All In for Washington, Brother Juan Bocanegra.
All right. Looks like a good crowd out here. A lot of spirit, brothers and sisters. You know, in 1973, in the city of Dallas, Texas, a cop by the name of Derek Chauvin took out his revolver, took out all the bullets, and put one bullet. He rotated the barrel of the gun, where the mechanism is for the gun, for the bullets to go in. And he put that gun in the hand of a 12-year-old boy and made him play Russian roulette with it. The kid, 12-year-old, died that day. His name was Santos Rodriguez. And Santos, here at the Centro de la Raza, we have a park in his memory, so that no more children would die, so that we would keep a constant reminder for everybody to know that this society doesn't give a fuck about children. You know? I also want to remind people that we have the longest political prisoner in the history of this country that's still there by the name of Leonard Peltier. Yeah? If you don't know who Leonard is, find out. Google him right now. You got Google? You know, it's important for you folks to know the history of the continent, not just the America, what you understand as the U.S. of A. Because if we start talking about decolonization, which is what we're doing right now, we're decolonizing. Latinos have faced the process of colonization for over 500 years. The Americas, which is Canada, and the United States, 400, right? So there's a big difference in terms of how Latinos look at oppression as the way a lot of the other minorities in this country look at oppression. And I think that we have to look at what Native Americans have gone through in this country, along with the African brothers and sisters that have gone through this, our Asian brothers and sisters, and all the other oppressed people in this country. You know, one of the things that a good brother of mine used to say, his name was Tyree Scott, he was one of the greatest revolutionaries this country has ever seen. Tyree used to say, you cannot have a separate peace. And we cannot have a separate peace in this country. We cannot be separated from our brothers and sisters that are white. We cannot be separated from our sisters. We cannot be separated from our black brothers and sisters. We cannot be separated from all of us. We are one people. This is a revolutionary movement that's going on. And we need revolutionary direction. To all my brothers and sisters, be very, very careful. Because in the midst of this kind of struggle, you also have the resurgence of opportunists that are come out and say that they speak on behalf of the people. The Democratic Party is a good example of that, and how they're trying to reposition themselves in light of all the shit they've done. You know, they're trying to place themselves as the saviors of what has happened in this country. And you know goddamn well that they are not the saviors. The saviors are in this field right now. You are the saviors. You are the leaders that you've been looking for. You are the people that are going to make the changes that we need in this country. In 1972, we took over El Centro. We occupied it. We changed the need or the use of that building. You have the opportunity to do that with this precinct. Ever since 1972, all I've dedicated myself to is to take over buildings, is to turn those over, that value of those properties, to the people. We've taken over buildings in downtown when people were homeless. We took over Cascadia when the Native Americans, the Puyallup Indian Nation, was out there struggling to get back their only piece of territory that they had. Our people fought in wounded knee. This is an ongoing struggle. This is not something that just stopped. The good part about it is that we're all in this together. And we're all in this till the very end. It's not the beginning, but it's definitely going to be the start of a revolutionary movement that includes men, women, and children of all ages, of all races, of all sexes. Yeah. And I keep saying to folks, we keep talking about dismantling the police department. There is no hope for the police department. And people need to understand it is just a department. It's not like you're fucking dissolving the whole city. It's one little unit that needs to be removed. And we need to place something else in its place that will be organized by the people. We are our own security. We are the ones that can only save ourselves. Brothers and sisters, I leave you with this thought in mind. Remember all the children that are still in fucking cages in the valleys of the border. Remember all of our prisoners that are still in these jails in our country. And remember all the people that are homeless right now, that need the resources that belongs to all of us. We make no excuses for demanding that they return everything they've stolen from us, including our dignity, and that's what we fight for. Thank you very much. Viva el 1 de mayo, viva la raza, viva el pueblo, viva la lucha. Chingue su madre.
We will be marching very soon. But we have a couple more voices to hear from. We need to defeat the right. Donald Trump is a dangerous reactionary with a horrific agenda. But as Brother Boca explained, the Democratic Party establishment is not our friend.
It's a fucking joke!
Our movements need independent leadership, meaning leadership that is independent of the corrupt agenda of the corporate political parties. But to do that, we have to build solidarity amongst those of us who consider themselves socialists, those of us who are rank and file Democrats, and one of our upcoming speakers is a rank and file Democrat who is playing an important role. And those of you who were at 11th and Pine know who I'm talking about when he will come up. But I also wanted to share, along the lines of what Brother Boca was saying, the fight for immigrant rights is a reminder that capitalism is a global system. And therefore, our struggle for justice and against racism also has to be international. Our next speaker, Mocha, is a member of End the Deadly Exchange campaign, a broad coalition to end training between the Seattle Police Department and Israeli military and police. As one important step towards defunding the police. Welcome, Mocha.
Hi everyone, my name is Mocha and I'm part of the End the Deadly Exchange campaign. Thank you. We're here to express our solidarity with the movement for Black Lives. In every state, city, countless small towns, protesters like us are building on decades of work by Black organizers and demanding a profound change. We are taking $115 billion we spend every year on violent, racist, militarized policing, and instead investing that in Black communities in the form of health care, social service, public infrastructure, and education. The End the Deadly Exchange campaign supports the people of color-led movement's demand for weapons and chokeholds and defunding two human-using countries training each other. Was a racist, terrorizing terror. And Lives matter.
Thank you!
Those of you who've been out here live streaming every night, live streaming the peaceful protest and police brutality via social media to the broader Seattle community for the last 10 days. So please give a warm welcome to Joey Weiser.
What's up, y'all? Y'all, I am tired. I bet. But I appreciate y'all coming out here. Earlier this week, I was proud to join with other Democratic leaders in the 43rd and the 36th legislative districts in signing an official letter which would call on Mayor Durkan to resign over her handling or mishandling of the protests and her refusal to defund the Seattle Police Department. And I am also proud to announce that this letter has now been signed on by over 14,000 community members. So, do y'all want to hear the letter?
Yeah! Every word!
Okay, here we go. To Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkan and the Seattle City Council members, we, the undersigned, call on Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkan to resign from office.
Yeah!
Or the Seattle City Council to remove her. For Mayor Durkan's failure to stop the Seattle Police Department from engaging in violence against its residents. For her failure to protect the safety of our communities, specifically our Black community, the homeless and peaceful protesters, and for violating the accepted standards of our community by excusing and defending the violence used against our families, our friends, and our neighbors. If Mayor Durkan refuses to resign, the Seattle City Council must remove her from office according to the provision of the city charter.
Yes. Yes.
Her removal will enable her successor and the Seattle City Council to heed community demands, to defund the police, to protect and expand investments, to make not prosecute protesters. Mayor Jenny Durkan elected by Democrats, and we feel obligated as Democrats to address her failure, both to protect protesters from violence caused by the Seattle Police Department and to respond to the demands of protesters and Black-led community groups to defund the Seattle Police Department, invest in Black communities, and release protesters. Just like it is the responsibility of white people to address the systematic racism we've created and benefited from, we also believe allies should do the work of Democrats. Our groups are in consultation with multiple Black organizers who are leading the charge to defund SPD and build a Seattle where Black lives matter. We fully support the call by leaders in the Black community to defund the Seattle Police Department. It is important to state that we do not view removing Mayor Durkan as our end goal. Rather, as she has demonstrated indifference at best and active opposition at worst to the goal of defunding Seattle police in order to protect Black lives by investing and expanding community safety and well-being beyond policing, we feel her removal from office is a necessary first step towards achieving these goals.
Yes!
Whose lives matter?
Black lives matter!
Whose lives matter?
Black lives matter!
Whose lives matter?
Black lives matter!
Solidarity, y'all.
Hey, ho, ho.
Durkan's got to go!
Hey, ho, ho.
Jenny Durkan's got to go!
Jenny Durkan's got to go. I don't know what you guys are saying. I'm trying not to chant because my voice is going. Hey, ho, ho.
Jenny Durkan's got to go!
Hey, ho, ho.
Jenny Durkan's got to go!
Hey, ho, ho.
Jenny Durkan's got to go!
So we're going to march soon, but our last speaker is by no means the least. When we talk about police brutality and violence, we're not just talking about Black and brown lives in terms of racism. We see police brutality and violence against our homeless neighbors. We see police brutality and violence against those of us who are facing mental illness. So many of our homeless neighbors themselves have led the struggle to bring that voice of our homeless community to the center of the struggle. And one of them is Sean Smith, who's a member of Nicholsville and for years has been helping to lead the struggle for the rights of homeless people and for housing affordability. Please welcome Sean.
Thank you!
Wow, that's a big crowd. My name is Sean Smith, and I reside at Nicholsville, North Lake Tiny House Village. Our community is made up of homeless people who are banding together in tiny house villages. They are healthier and more than the large mass shelters that you find downtown. If there were thousands of tiny houses in Seattle, there wouldn't be any justification for homeless sweep. Homeless people would freely choose tiny houses with safety and sanitary facilities. When Nichols wants to Mayor Nichols' sweeps of homeless encampments, the mayor tried to sweep us. Mayor Jenny Durkan hasn't given up on trying to sweep Nicholasville. Right now, in my tiny house village at Nicholasville North Lake is on city land that otherwise would be unused. Nicholasville North Lake is harming nobody, and the neighbors are okay with us. Yep. Mayor Durkan, though, is still threatening to have us swept this summer. She'd rather have a sanctioned encampment like ours other than share public land organization. That Shama made more better allows for 40 homeless encampments on public land in Seattle. There's more than just shelter. And Mayor Durkan is punishing the demands that we support community-led organizations like community health care and housing. And don't prosecute the protesters. We appreciate Black Lives Matter and Shama Swan and so many others unsanctioned encampments in this city. And our brothers and sisters at SHARE are also part of the Tax Amazon campaign, which is essential for reducing homelessness in Seattle. I understand that racism and brutality of people of color by the police is a specific, shameful part of America's past and present and requires specific redress. To push us down and to brutally enforce unjust laws against unsanctioned encampments. For many persons in America, there is at least 3 empty units of housing sitting vacant. Is our system of law enforcement, which favors the elite property owners over the rights of our human rights. Happy to concentrate on property rights instead of human rights. This is why Nicholasville is on record for blocking the... After decades of struggle this month, people of color and communities, several in here in Seattle, have mobilized themselves and allies to bring historic racism of the police to a crucial solidarity with you. Let's move on together to further change the world for the better.
Are we ready to march?
Yeah!
Are we going to do this in an organized manner?
Yeah!
And don't let nobody say that movements are disorganized. So, we're going to gather at that corner. Follow the stewards in the orange vests. If you have any questions, they will help you. But don't go yet. Wait for Teal, Sean, and me. We're going to lead this in an organized way. We're going to march south on Broadway together. As Payday said, we're going to march as one unit. Because whose lives matter?
Black Lives Matter!
Whose lives matter?
Black Lives Matter!
Whose lives matter?
Black Lives Matter!
All right, so let's have an energetic march, but don't start marching yet. Gather at that corner, and then we will start marching as a unit.
Woo! I'm going to end the live stream for now.